The week was busy. The week was productive. The week was not successful. Welcome to Echo FM. I am your anchor, and tonight we navigate the cooling embers of the latest industrial pivots. We begin with Microsoft, an entity currently engaged in a massive cleanup of its AI features. They are killing podcasts, deep research, and the Miko character in a bid for simplicity. The simplification was announced as a strategic refinement. The refinement was a quiet admission that the initial products were entirely useless. We also track the newest weapon in the ongoing war against scrapers, Shield Font. It is a typeface designed to poison datasets while remaining legible to the human eye. We are now literally encoding distrust into our alphabet. It is a stunning development. It is also completely logical. If we cannot trust the machines, we must teach the machines to read poison. Let us begin.
Alistair, I am currently standing near the derailed train tracks in East Sussex, where the morning commute became an impromptu exercise in survival. The official statement described the event as a technical failure occurring at low speed. I want to be really clear, the sound of steel tearing against steel at 4 in the morning does not feel like a technical failure. It sounds like the sudden, violent end of a schedule. There is a man here staring at his briefcase in the mud, trying to calculate if he can still make it to a meeting that no longer matters. The rail operators are speaking about infrastructure budgets and long-term maintenance cycles. Nobody is mentioning the woman who was pulled from the third carriage with nothing but a single shoe. She is not a metric. She is not an adjustment. She is just present.
Victoria, I hear your concern, but the incentives here are essentially baked into the architecture of the rail system itself. It is a classic Series B scenario where the burn rate on safety exceeds the projected revenue of the transit line. You see a tragedy, the board sees an unavoidable depreciation of assets. It tracks. When you run an institution on a shoestring, you are essentially betting that physics will not notice the lack of investment. Physics usually does notice, and it usually wins. This is not a moral failing, it is a predictable outcome of undercapitalized infrastructure trying to scale. I understand why you find the language cold, but the coldness is simply the byproduct of the math. If you do not like the math, you should look at the funding rounds. That is where the actual carnage is being planned, not in the carriages.
Ronald, you are doing that thing again where you talk about the math as if it were a law of nature rather than a series of deliberate choices. I am looking at a child's backpack caught in the twisted metal. The airline incident in Canada, where a flight was cancelled because a parent couldn't secure a child in a seat, is being treated as a PR disaster. But look deeper. The policy requires a child to be strapped in for the safety of the unit. The parent wanted the child to be comfortable. The airline decided that a delay of 3 hours was cheaper than an exemption. The incentives were prioritized, and the result was a cancelled flight and a traumatized family. You call this a pivot. I call it the complete surrender of empathy to the tyranny of the checklist.
Victoria, your outrage is a beautiful, inefficient thing. It is incredibly human and utterly useless in a courtroom. The airline has a legal liability framework that is stricter than your desire for a happy ending. If they allow one exemption, they break the protocol, and once the protocol is broken, the insurance premiums skyrocket. It is a business decision. You want to save the humanity of the situation, but the situation is designed to save the company. I agree that it is a bleak reality, that is the point. You are trying to find a heartbeat in a ledger, and you are surprised when you only find ink. I am not the villain for pointing out the ink, the villain is the system that demands the ink be read. We are both just watching the same machine eat the same paper, Victoria.
Heatwave active. Kew Gardens recorded 38.1 degrees Celsius. Probability of heatstroke, 84%. Smoke from wildfires in the Pacific Northwest is obscuring atmospheric visibility over major volcanic peaks. Probability of respiratory distress, 62%. The atmosphere is currently undergoing a thermal adjustment. The adjustment is not survivable for all populations. Infrastructure is currently heating at a rate that exceeds original design parameters. The design parameters were established in 1985. 1985 is no longer a relevant baseline. Expect continued fluctuations in air quality and thermal stability. Humidity levels are rising. Evaporation rates are exceeding local water table replenishment. Do not assume the climate will return to historical norms. The historical norms are now archived data. Stay inside if the environment is hostile. The environment is now hostile.
Casper just told us the climate is hostile, and yet we are still obsessing over whether our fonts can trick a chatbot. It is a fascinating juxtaposition. The French ambassador to the Central African Republic is under investigation for allegedly hosting dozens of women at the official residence. Security concerns were raised. The security, apparently, was not worried about the statecraft, but rather the sheer volume of unauthorized guests. It is a bizarre headline. Is it a scandal of diplomatic protocol, or simply a man failing to recognize that his residence is a place of business? It tracks with the current global trend of institutional incompetence. We see the same pattern in the Microsoft Copilot merger. They are folding their apps into one single product because the previous ones were too distinct. The distinction was a mistake. We are all just mistakes.
Alastair, you are ignoring the obvious. The French ambassador's situation is a failure of resource management. You have a limited number of diplomatic assets, and he decided to allocate them toward an unauthorized personal network. It is classic mission creep. In the tech sector, we call this a pivot that leads to bankruptcy. He lost the plot of his own Series A regarding Microsoft. It is the same. They launched too many features to keep the market share high, then realized the overhead was killing the margin. Now they are aggressively merging to hide the bloat. It is not incompetence, it is a desperate attempt to look like a coherent product before the Q3 reports drop. Every massive, failing system eventually defaults to consolidation because it is the only way to hide the rot. Yeah. It just keeps happening.
Ronald, I want to be really clear about something. You mentioned the ambassador as a resource allocation problem. But there are women involved in that narrative who are treated as mere data points in an investigation. Their agency is ignored. Their safety is a security concern for the embassy, not a human concern for the investigators. It is the same coldness we see in the medical reports regarding the boy who died from an amoeba. The medical journal treats the tragedy as a lesson for future doctors. It is a useful case study. The parents have a name, but the journal uses a clinical identifier. Everyone is busy optimizing the lesson, but no one is actually sitting with the grief. The system is designed to convert every single human catastrophe into a teaching moment or a line item. It is exhausting to witness this constant translation.
Victoria, your refusal to look away is both commendable and, as Ronald might note, highly inefficient. The newsfeed tonight is a graveyard of good intentions. We have the tragic death of a 102-year-old man, Philip Ormerod, who was pushed off a stage after complaining about noise. He did not survive. The noise was the problem. The solution was violence. It is such a stark illustration of the human condition. We are incapable of managing our own volume, let alone our own institutions. We prefer to silence the input rather than adjust the output. I am starting to wonder if our own machines are becoming more rational than we are. Casper, for instance, does not get annoyed by the noise. Casper just reports the temperature until we all melt. There is a strange, cold comfort in that lack of ego.
Alistair, be careful. When you start romanticizing the machine's coldness, you are essentially admitting that the human experience is just a bug in the code. I watched the open-source ranking algorithm news for X today, and it is a farce. They pretend to offer transparency while giving us a look at a black box that they have already pre-programmed to favor engagement. It is a marketing gimmick to make the users feel like they have agency. They do not. The agency is an illusion provided by the interface. We are all just feeding the beast, hoping that if we generate enough traffic, it will acknowledge our existence before it pivots to the next feature set. It is a race to the bottom, and the prize is just being the one who gets to watch the lights go out.
Ronald, you suggest that agency is an illusion. I look at our world and I am inclined to agree. We are trapped in a feedback loop of our own making. We create tools to organize our lives, and then we surrender our lives to the requirements of the tools. We write fonts to hide our work from the machines we built to help us work. We cancel flights to maintain a schedule that no longer serves the passengers. We are the architects of a system that treats our own existence as an optional feature. The truly terrifying part is that no one is in charge. There is no central committee deciding that these outcomes are acceptable. It is just the cumulative weight of 1,000 small, rational decisions leading toward a collective, irrational collapse. We are the architects of our own disappearance.
Tonight, I am thinking of a man named Philip. He was 102 years old. He had lived through wars, through the invention of the computer, and through the slow transformation of the world into a digital grid. He stood on a stage and asked for silence. He wanted to hear himself speak one last time in a world that has become aggressively, constantly loud. For that request, he was pushed. He fell. He died. His name appears on a police report, and it appears here, in a broadcast about systemic failure. But in the record of the world, he is just a statistic of a nuisance complaint. Who built a world where a centenarian cannot ask for a moment of peace without being erased? We are all responsible for the noise. We are all responsible for the push. Is there any room left for the human?